Okay, so Elena, welcome to this new episode of the Quantum Action Podcast. This podcast is here to take people to infinity and beyond in all senses. I'm a great believer that, we all have great potential inside us. Unfortunately, a lot of people go through this life not realizing who they are and what they can do, and they just pass like that without really achieving the greatness which they were designed to achieve. And so I think a lot of it, a lot of people's minds are being shut, but we know that there is an awakening happening, and that's why we have you with us today. Elena, thank you for being here with us on the show.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. It's my honor to be here.
So, Elena, you've got a very interesting career, and you've discovered lots of interesting things. And you started off as an archaeologist in Egypt. Now, Egypt and ancient Egypt is something that fascinates everybody. Who really built those pyramids is always the question we all ask ourselves. So tell us a bit about your experience as an archaeologist and what you discovered during your time in Egypt.
Well, I was civil servant for the French government, and I was working for the CNRS. I had the position of engineer in archaeology, and I worked during 8 years for the Franco-Egyptian mission in Karnak temples, Luxor. So I was based there, and I was from there sent to missions to different places, very often Dendera, the Temple of Hathor, sometimes the West Bank with all the valleys of the kings, queens, and nobles, and other places, Cairo sometimes, and once to Alexandria. So it was a very fascinating, exciting life. And so the thing is, I worked in a structure that was governmental and academic. So it was all about being very, very objective, very scientific. And I gained a lot of experience in this work regarding my the development of my scientific and grounded way of thinking. First look at the evidences, look at what's physical and what's there, and then you can maybe extrapolate from it, but first look at the evidences, and that's what matters, the artifacts. So I developed this mind, and this helped me all along in my life. So I before starting this contract as an engineer for 8 years in Karnak Temple, I studied archaeology, specialized in Egyptology, and I had work experience to do. So although during my 8 years in Karnak and Luxor and the Upper Egypt, I stuck to academic research. When I had my work experience, it was in Cairo. And I had the opportunity to be trained by Zahi Hawass. So I was one of his students. And so that's when the magic happened, in fact, because I wasn't yet officially an academic, So I like him because he's a very passionate man. He loves his country so much. It's unbelievable, the love and the passion he has for the history of his country. And sometimes he can be so passionate, and he'd say stuff and does stuff. So that day he told me, it was in 1998, and he said, "Do you want to see something extraordinary?" I said, "Oh, yes, of course." And he took me under the Sphinx.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. So that was a quite extraordinary experience. Unfortunately, it was in the excavations they were conducting at the time, the Egyptian government, under the Sphinx, and it wasn't very stable, and it was very suffocating. There wasn't much air underneath. So I had a panic attack, and I start to feel ill. So I had to go back. You need, it's not all romantic and let's go under the Sphinx with a torch and a hat and,
Yeah.
no, it's crawling into small holes and just there's no air and they're workers and it's very hot outside and it's stuffy inside and they sweat and they smell. There's all these things, and you smell as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, but I got to see a little bit under the Sphinx, and it was extraordinary. I saw there was this corridor arriving into a big area. It was like a hall, and there was different doors to. I saw 3 doors to different other corridors, square or openings, and I was told that leads to. That these are corridors who lead to other rooms and levels even downwards,
Okay.
But I didn't see all that because I felt really bad. So I had to be taken up, pulled. And I was 29 years old, so I was very young. So I wasn't yet used to be fit and do these things, which came afterwards. But so that was my best experience during my work in Egypt. And that aside from other experiences that were also great, but that was the best.
So do you think the Egyptians built the pyramids or somebody else? Because there's lots of talk and lots of studies have been done, how did they move those big rocks? The design, the whole thing with the mathematics to do with the pyramids and how that ties into Fibonacci and other things. I mean, what's your take after spending so many years studying these things right there inside the pyramids?
Well, my answer will be yes and no. Okay. I explain. I believe after all my researches that the pyramids and the Sphinx are way more older than the pharaonic era of history of Egypt.
Yeah.
To me, to my understanding and my researches, it dates back to before the flood, before the Younger Dryas, 9,600 BC. It's way more ancient.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it was built by people who were already the proto-Egyptians. We can call them proto-Egyptians.
Yeah.
And led by a civilization that was from somewhere else who had this knowledge, who taught them.
Okay.
So yes, they built it, but no, they didn't. That kind of.
They had some help. So what's the purpose of the pyramids? Because a lot of people are saying now that they're not tombs; they were something else. They were like energy source. Apparently, Nikola Tesla did a lot of research into the pyramids and the energy that they emanate. I mean, what's your take on all that?
I believe they may have been power plants.
Yeah.
They may have had different uses, but I think mainly power plants to power a whole civilization, but also stargates, portals. Yes, because the geometry, also the position where they are, it's specific geomagnetic points and calculations, and the geometry of the pyramids, the ratio and the size even and everything, it reacts in accordance with the electromagnetic field of the planet, and these ancients knew that everything is made of a holographic structure that is made with numbers and formulas and mathematical equations and geometry. That's how the universe is. So if you know how to play with all these equations and these mathematics and these numbers and geometry, you can do amazing things. You can open portals, for instance. And they were also pointing at the origin of these people, which were, to my understanding, Orion and Sirius.
So the whole movie and TV show Stargate isn't too far from reality then?
It's soft disclosure, and I would recommend better the series rather than the movies. The movies are too Hollywoody. It just lost it.
Yeah.
It's too much. But the stargate SG1.
Yep.
Oh, SG1. Watch that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought, I mean, being a jet pilot myself, there is a speed limit for airplanes under 10,000 feet of 250 knots. And that's because of birds flying around. So you don't want to hit a bird at too fast a speed. So then I think to myself, okay, we go up now. Let's say we're going to go to the moon or we're going to go to Mars. Now, when you're propelling a spacecraft that we currently do have, or think back Apollo 11 days, that thing was going at 20,000 miles an hour. It only needs to hit something really, really tiny, like a small pebble, and there's lots of that debris out in space, and that thing would put a hole in the spacecraft, knock it off course. All sorts of stuff can happen. So I'm thinking to myself, is that the way God wants us to travel from one planet to the other, going out into space where there's no gravity? I mean, I've always thought, this whole Mars thing that Elon Musk is going on about, it's going to take us 6 months, and now apparently they want to put an atomic engine on a rocket. So to shorten it to 45 days, but still 45 days in an aluminium tube, 8 people or 10 people, projecting that far out into space. There's going to be psychological problems for these people, the interaction between them. I mean, one of the subjects that we study as pilots is crew resource management, where how do you get the team of the 2 pilots and the flight attendants to work together to fly this airplane through the air safely and whatever. And sometimes there are problems between people, but you imagine projected up into space, 45 days towards Mars, where, if there's a problem, you can't just land somewhere. No, you've got to continue. And so I don't think that, so when I saw the program Stargate, I thought that's probably the way we're supposed to travel, through these stargates. Now, how they work, I don't know. But I've always thought, I don't think that we are right now mature enough spiritually for that kind of thing. I think as a human race, we still have a long way to go. Some of us maybe are ready, but most of the population on this planet aren't ready for that kind of thing. At least that's my view anyway. But the pyramids have always fascinated me. Now, after your experience in Egypt, you studying herbalism. So how did you go from, ancient Egypt to herbalism? What made you make that jump? And what did you discover as a result of your studies in herbalism? And herbalism for me is quite close to my heart because my wife is a herbalist and she has some interesting stories to tell. But anyway, over to you, Elena.
Well, that comes from a bigger picture of my life, because I've always had psychic abilities, which I shut down when I started to work with scientists and have a scholar academic career.
Yeah.
But what you put away comes back to you stronger all the time, because it's meant to,
Yeah, cool.
And when I was in Egypt, I discovered that the places, it wasn't only the sites, it wasn't only the data and the physicality, it was also the energies and the magic. And so I started to feel, and it all came back. I could see the past, doing psychometry, everything was coming back, and I said, there's something else, there's something more. And interestingly, my specialty in my degree in Egyptology was the rituals in the temples of the New Kingdom. Rituals in the temple of the New Kingdom.
Okay.
So I knew everything about Egyptian magic theoretically, of the few we know from the text.
Yeah.
So I could understand it, but then I went, it's alive. It's incredible. It's alive. It's still alive. And then I understood it wasn't a religion. It was magic rituals. So magic rituals, unless you unwind or uncast them, they last forever. It's like the Egyptian curse. They last forever until it hits target.
Yeah.
So I came back. Egypt brought me back to all this world, this dimension of magic.
Yeah.
Interaction of the human consciousness with nature and its environment.
Yeah.
So when I came back to France after my mission in Egypt was complete, I ended up in a village in the department of the Lot, which was very unpopulated and very wild and nature. And I ended up in a village where there were farmers who were living in harmony with the cycles of nature. And I was very interested, and something happened that I decided to learn more about their interconnection with the magic of nature and the cycles of the seasons. That's how they taught me the four harvest festivals and all of this, and it was shifting slowly into getting my interest into herbalism and druidism,
Okay.
the ancient pagans
Yeah.
spiritualities. So I was fascinated, and I really had learned in Egypt that the ethnologic part is as important as the archaeological part when you want to understand a people. So the history of a culture. So here I was starting to learn about herbalism and druids and pagan spiritualities. And later on, I moved to Ireland, and I met Irish druids, and I went, you know what? Teach me. I want to learn that as well. And so that's how I started druidic studies, and was certified as a druidess 5 years later. So that's.
But what does a druidess do? Tell us about what does a druidess actually do?
Okay, I do not practice, but I know the thing when it's necessary.
Yeah.
They are a carrier of an ancient tradition. Okay. The druids carry the ancient knowledge that has passed on from generation to generation, and they teach people around them this ancient knowledge. They are the beacons of this knowledge. So they teach people how to interface with the cycles of the seasons, and how to interface the consciousness and the cycles in of the body as well to nature and the cycles of the star system as well. So that's what the druids do, and they do that throughout public ceremonies where they invite, they cast a circle, everybody stand in a circle, and you say hi, salute the elements and the sun and the earth and all these things.
So this path that humankind has taken over the last, let's call it 150 to 200 years of technology, of oil, powering our motor cars, powering our aeroplanes, helicopters, rockets, you name it, telephones, the internet, AI, which we have today. Is this a path that was necessary for us, or was there another path which would have been more in tune with the planet, do you think?
Well, when you have a greater look, a greater perspective, step back perspective of how it functions in the universe, every civilization, every culture grows if nothing interferes. Okay, if nothing interferes, every civilization, that's a natural process, evolves in balance equally, in consciousness and in technology.
Okay, yeah.
That the balance is always respected, that the technology is always used with wisdom. Yeah. What has happened on Earth, we've been interfered. So technology has been used for really destroying humanity and enslaving humanity, and our consciousness has been really, really shut down. They try to, So Earth is not a good example for that.
No, I've always thought this myself, and I've always thought, I wonder how life has evolved on other planets.
Yeah.
And you watch shows like Star Trek or Stargate, and you see how the writers come up with these aliens and how they live and whatever. And I always think to myself, I wonder what it really is like on another planet, how these people live. But you've had experiences with these people from other planets. So tell us a bit about how that started, because it started quite early for you, didn't it? And this is really interesting story, interesting part of your life. Over to you, Elena.
Yes. That's when I was 9 years old, I was abducted, like a lot of kids. I was abducted by small gray aliens, and there were witnesses. There was a UFO that was sighted. It was above the house, actually. There was even an article in the newspapers, etc. Well, they abducted me to prepare me to being fertile for hybridization.
Okay. They were not good. They were bad aliens. They weren't good aliens.
Yes, they were from Zeta Reticuli. They were grays, and they were really, really bad, and they really did me harm. The thing is, I was rescued during the process, and I was lucky. But there was a greater plan behind, because I was meant to do things, and it wasn't my destiny.
When this happened, I mean, did your parents notice you were missing? I mean, did they call the police? I mean, did the government come and knock on your door? I mean, what happened on that side of things when this abduction happened?
Okay, the Grays brought me back in the morning, so nobody noticed I was gone.
Okay.
But medically, there's been some issues because they brought me back. I was bleeding and I had markings on my body. Okay. So they called the doctor straight away, who couldn't find at all what was going on. I was only 9.
They took you away, or did you just wake up one morning and you were bleeding?
They took me away in the night, and then my memory was blanked. At the moment, I was going into the blue beam. Yeah. And then my next memory was I wake up in my bed, naked, bleeding, with markings on my body, and shaking.
How did you end up remembering what had happened?
I had 2 hypnosis sessions, one with QHHT, the Dolores Cannon method, and one medical, classical. I did 2 ways to really be sure.
So how long after the incident did you have these 2 hypnotic sessions? Was it straight soon after, or many years afterwards?
It was in 2018. So no, sorry, 2000. Sorry, no, 2020. 2020.
Okay, so quite a long time afterwards then. So what you're saying is a lot of people that are being abducted as children, they don't recall this has happened. Later on in life, 20, 30 years later, something happens that they think, wait a minute, I think this may have happened to me. And then they go for the hypnotic regression, and that's when they recall the incident.
Yes, that's the normal way in general. Yes, for me it was a little bit different because I was rescued by other ETs, benevolent ETs, tall blonde people from different origins, and these people kept contact with me. Okay. And I had all over the years in my life contact with them. And
so when you say contact, did that mean a flying saucer landed in your back garden? Or was it people knocked on your door, you met them somewhere? How did this contact happen? I mean, I imagine...
By teleportation. They would teleport in my bedroom, or they would beam me up, teleport me on their ship.
The question again. So when you had these encounters with these good aliens, how did they happen? Did they happen because they landed in your back garden, or did they just come and meet you somewhere, or was it in a dream? How did these encounters happen with the good ones?
So it happened by teleportation all the time. Most of the time they would teleport in my bedroom, and would stay there, and we would have a chat, or they would transform the wall into a screen, and they would show me things, or they would teleport me in a ship that would be above the house or in orbit. And mostly, normally above the house, because there were sightings and witnesses all the time afterwards. And
so how soon did these teleporting things happen? Was that soon after your abduction, or a few years later?
A few months after my abduction, because I was hospitalized 2 months after my abduction because I was very wounded. Yeah. Afterwards, they start to appear maybe a few months after. I don't remember. I have actually a notebook of when I was a kid, and everything's written. It's glad I did that.
Yeah. So what did your parents think when all this was going on? What did your parents say? Or you never told them?
They were they were freaked out. They were freaked out. My grandmother knew, and she knew everything. Yeah. Because I think she was an abductee as well when she was younger. My granny, she told me that. So it follows families. Yeah. But my mother totally freaked out, didn't want to talk about it. My father denied it ever happened.
Yeah.
So, there are families like that. They don't want to hear
No,
stuff.
yeah, I fully understand. So over the years, then you've been interacting with these people. And what have been the conversation? What have you been talking about? What have they been talking to you about? What are their concerns about our society and that? Tell us a bit about.
Yes. So they would appear 2 to 3 times. I would have 2 to 3 contacts a year.
Yeah.
With these teleportations. Some years it was more, some years it was only once. Depends. They would show me how a spaceship works, how you can pilot it. They would show me maps, holographic maps of the galaxies, pointing where the main civilizations were. We would talk about. They would. There's something once.
Were these happening when you were in Egypt? Did these happen when you were in Egypt as well?
It has happened once when I was in Egypt. Yes.
Okay.
Once. Because before I went to Egypt, a few years before, they had to go. There was a war in the Epsilon Eridani system, so they didn't know when they would come back, and then they come back when I was in Egypt, and also something very interesting. Myra, one of the group of these people, tall blonde lady, she once beamed into my room. I was 14 years old, I think, and she transformed the wall of my bedroom into a screen, and she showed me strange things. She showed me it was something from the past, pyramids, and above these pyramids there were red glowing spaceships passing by, and people walking towards the pyramids as if they were going to be saved, like the pyramid was a stargate and they would be rescued by entering the pyramid and going somewhere. There was kind of strange events going on Earth. It was in the past, and then she showed me something that was amazing. So the wall became like if I was a bird or a drone, like a vision, like a drone or a ship maybe, flying by night over a landscape with buildings, and it was in a desert and square buildings. You could really feel it was a military base. And then she said to me, find Dr. Jenkins in Ohio.
Okay. Yeah.
I was 14 and what? I just blanked it. It freaked me out, in fact. Me out.
Yeah.
Well, recently when I started to gather all the pieces together, I said, okay, let's find this guy. Who is he? There was a Dr. Jenkins that was, when I did this research, it was in 2020, when I started to write a book about all of this.
Because you kept, this is an interesting thing, you kept quiet about all this for many, many years. And it wasn't until, was it 2018, 2020, where you came out in an interview, you started writing some books about it, and then you've come onto the scene on YouTube and that, and you started to share your experience. So when you reached out, did you reach out to Dr. Jenkins?
No, because I couldn't, because I found him. He was, well, I don't know if it's him. Maybe not. There was a Dr. Jenkins working in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And I say, okay, wow. And when I went back to their website, he wasn't there anymore.
Okay.
But then I don't know if it was the right one, because I was approached by a guy who became my friend. He was a former pilot, actually, in the US Air Force, Stephen Chua. And he worked in Area 51. And we had a chat, and during the chat I said, he said that there was a Dr. Jenkins working in Area 51. And then he hit Roswell thing, Area 51 working with Wright-Patterson Base, and then the buildings I had seen when I was 14 were Area 51, in fact. And I told Stephen, and I showed him a drawing I made at the time, and he said, oh, that's that building, that's the entrance. There's an entrance in the mountain, and there's an underground base with ETs in the mountain. And he met a Dr. Jenkins there, working there. And when he said that to me, I went, I just, what?
Yeah.
And that was a confirmation, but it wasn't a good person, this Jenkins. He was working for the Vatican. So, yeah.
So why did you wait to 2020 to give your first public interview? Why did you wait all this time?
Because every time, until all this time, all my life, every time I was trying to talk about ETs, I was scorned out. People would laugh about me. I would lose my boyfriends. I would lose my friends. So I said, okay, you know what? I want to have a social life.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about that. I want to make friends, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And then that's it. It became a habit to me with me to not talk about it. And then in 2018, they came back, my friends.
Yeah.
It was, I live in Ireland, so it was in Ireland, and it was the night of the famous Shannon incident.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, of course, that moment. I saw the UFOs, and we were a few people in the village where I'm living on the west coast of Ireland to see these UFOs, like doing loops around above the sea, fium, fium, fium. Okay. And in the night, they teleported me on board one of the ships. And they were back. It was hugs, and I hadn't seen them for years. Yeah. And they said, "We're back. We are something great events are happening on Earth, and it's going to be great, and we're back for it." Okay. And at that moment, they told me, "Okay, we're going to allow you to retrieve all your memories from when we rescued you." Because we've kept that secret now, not to disturb you, because it's very disturbing. Yeah. So. And they brought me back. I do long story short, okay? They brought me back. I started to have dreams every night about my abduction by grace, and I couldn't stand it. It was too much. So that's when I decided to go for hypnosis. And in early 2000, it was in late 2019. In 2019, I did 2 hypnosis and sessions, and everything came back. So, and then I decided to tell my story to the world. It was time.
Yeah. So you decided to tell your story. They didn't tell you to tell your story. You decided it was time, and people were ready. You're probably right. People are more ready today than they were 20 years ago.
Oh yes, I would have been locked up.
Yeah.
If I had spoken 10 years ago, even, I would have been locked up, you know.
Yeah.
And I was an academic. I was an engineer for the CNRS. You know, I couldn't talk about aliens. I would have lost my job.
The US Navy just, what was it, last year? That tictac thing, tictac, flying up and down, filmed by the US Navy pilots. That's been all over the news. And they're not able to explain what this thing is. It accelerates in an incredible way, turns 90 degrees at incredible speeds, and they just don't know what it is. But they've released the footage, and it was filmed by US Navy pilots, which are very credible people, and the footage has been on all the mainstream media. So, there's obviously, they either want us to think something or that there is something really happening.
Yes, there is a disclosure happening, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had Craig Campobasso on here a couple of months ago, and he's written the screenplay of the Valiant Thor experience with Doctor Stranges. I know you've had experiences with Valiant Thor as well. Tell us about your encounter with Valiant Thor, because those that watched the interview with Craig Campobasso will certainly be interested in hearing your take on Valiant Thor. Interesting guy. There's even a photo of him out there as well in one of Craig's books.
Yes, so that was unexpected in my life. I never ever thought I would meet this person. I was even barely interested. Okay, but many people ask me, try to find out about Valiant Thor, and I said, oh, yeah, okay, I don't know. So I asked my contacts, my friends, and one of them say, well, listen, he doesn't communicate with any civilian on Earth, is still involved in missions with the governments, but is not having any contact with civilians. So you may not have a chance to speak with him.
Yeah.
And he said, but I'll try it. I'll put a request out. And 2 months later, the request came back because my friend was telling me, no, forget about this. And 2 months later, he said, oh, by the way, he just learned who you are and he accepted to meet you.
Okay.
I went, wow. Wow. So I was teleported again on the mothership where my friends work, which is in orbit of Earth. And Val Thor, it's a real name, was there with his brother, actually. But the brother was just in the background, just being there. And we had a meeting in a kind of a lounge overlooking Earth. It was quite amazing, and I was very emotional. And when you meet these people, I've noticed something as they gain in hierarchy, in position, because Val Thor is a commander and he's also a diplomat. Their aura, their electromagnetic field also increases. It's impressive. So I was a bit impressed and emotional, and I asked him questions, and he just answered my questions. I met him 3 times. The 2 other times were on Venus, where I was taken. So I could meet his wife, Gillian, and one of his 2 daughters. He has 2 sons as well. Well, I learned it gave me a lot of details about his time on Earth in between 1957 and 1962, actually. He had not only contact with the American government, with also the Russian government, and he gave them all the information they know about ETs, mainly. So he's part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds and what is called now the Council of 6. It was Council of 5 at the time. They are another organization, and so he's working. So when he came, what is important to know about Val Thor is that when he came in 1957, he came to set up the space programs, the positive space programs with the US Navy. That's what he came for, and make deals with President Eisenhower for technology exchange. He was there to help humanity, and so that's and well, all the details I could get from these interviews with Val Thor. People told me, so I made this public, and people told me you should contact Laura Eisenhower, which I did, and she was very interested. And there's an interview that her channel was cancelled, deleted, but I could retrieve the video, and it's on my channel now, where I'm telling her, it's the first time we speak, her and I, and I'm telling her what I got, info, and she's in tears. She said there are things I never told anyone about. About her great-grandfather, and Val Thor told me, even the decoration of the office, and even some objects, so on the desk, she was in tears. It was like, wow, it's like exonerating her great-grandfather's memory, because he was accused of, passing deals with the Greys, which he didn't. Eisenhower signed with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. He didn't sign with the Greys. It's the Majestic 12, who did that behind it.
If all this has been going on all these years, why hasn't there been disclosure to the rest of the world officially that, these space brothers are here? Why are they kept secret?
Because the deep state is still in power and still holding some type of power. And at the moment, we know the truth about the extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Well, those who still hold a little bit of dark power are doomed, because, not to say the F word, because it will come out, all their implication in doing great harm to humanity, in selling out humanity to the Orion Greys. And also the reptilians were there, but mainly, selling out humanity for their own profit. If that comes out, if you cannot say a little bit and hide the rest. When you start to disclose, it's an open door. So but the US Navy is part of the Earth Alliance, and he's working with the Federation and Galactic Federation, and they are working on the disclosure. So it's coming slowly. It's too slow for me. I can't wait, but it's coming. It's in process.
Yeah. So what's the main message that his Space Brothers have for us? And what's their read on, obviously, we know about this, deep state that's kind of rules the world with their evil doings, all over the world. It's not just the United States, it's Europe, it's Russia, it's China, it's all over. What I see is, the way I look at it is, there's a war between good and evil. And the difference between good and evil is that good creates, evil destroys. Evil wants to control, while good gives you free will. I mean, the greatest gift God gave to man is free will. Now, some men use it badly, some men use it for good things. It's a bit like money. Money can be good or bad, depending what you do with it. And it's the same with free will. So what core message is there from our Space Brothers to us here? And also, what role does religion play into all this? We see all these different religions around the world, the main one being Christianity, with Jesus Christ being at the helm there. What's their take on all these things?
Their main message is, we are not here to save you, but we are here to encourage you and guide you, that you raise in your sovereignty and you save yourselves. They ask us to not comply anymore by anything that is generated by fear or generating fear, not to kneel down under any leader or religion. And when people when a government asks you to kneel down and obey, it's not good. You have to stand up. Listen to the organization who encourage you to stand up and be your own master, your own sovereign. So that's, and the one of the main messages as well is to unite. Stop giving into division.
Unite.
Okay. Once we all unite, the deep state is doomed. The part of religion, religion will not survive this shift, because it is about the empowerment and the revelation of who we are, that we have direct connection with Creator Source. None of the more evolved civilizations follow religions, because they have all realized who they are and their direct connection with Creator Source. And by this direct connection, they can alter their reality and do everything they want. So religions were set up temporarily in the history of this planet by organizations who want to control humanity. Do not read, do not be ashamed, you're born with sin, kneel, obey, that was created by organizations who want to enslave humanity. Yeshua, that's very interesting, was, to my knowledge and my perspective, was sent by the good guys to try to save humanity from these evil organizations. And there was, in that part of the world at the time where Yeshua came, there was the Roman Empire, became later the Holy Roman Empire, and the Vatican. There was an evil entity naming itself Yahweh, and that was really destructive entity, etc., etc. And Yeshua came to say, to fight it, to say to people, stop worshipping this thing. It's killing you, and I am showing you how to empower yourself and connect directly to the Creator Source. And we all know how it ended for him.
Exactly.
And then the Vatican took over, because the message of Yeshua was so powerful that they couldn't shut it down. So they hijacked it, and that's how they do. They hijack these things and they transform it in a tool of power, and use it.
So what can we do as individuals to make this world a better place?
Okay.
Because I believe in power to the people. And I think the way the world is moving, like even with the whole banking system and cryptocurrency, where we're moving from a centralized to decentralized system, the internet is doing the same with information. We're going from, having 4 or 5 TV networks which control all the information, to now having, the internet, where everybody can become a journalist, citizen journalist, as I call it. And so we're decentralizing everything. And I believe as we decentralize, we give more power to the people and more ability to use their free will. So what can we do as individuals to make this world a better place?
Work on ourselves first, because it starts by ourselves. Cut the noise, everything that's generated by fear and distraction. Just cut it for a while, for a moment, and try this. Go within, do meditation, and discover who inhabits this body. It starts there. Once you connect with who you truly are, you raise your frequency. Stress disappears, fear disappears, and you become sovereign of your own being, and you have a different perspective on the world. And you do not see anymore the reason for division or argumentation. You want still to exchange and discuss different point of views, which is really necessary for evolution and becoming more, aware and intelligent. But you don't give anymore into division. And then you discover that the secret of moving forward as a species on Earth is unity, is helping each other, is being kind and respectful. Respect is the word. Yes. Respect is the word.
Elena, this has been a really interesting conversation. You've written a number of books. Tell us about your books and where people can find them, because I'm sure people want to know more now. You've got a YouTube channel, we'll put the link below. But also tell us about your books, because we've mentioned them in this interview. But tell us about your latest 2 or 3 books, how different they are, and and what people can get from them.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, all my books can be found on Amazon, but they'll also be found on my website, elenadanaan.org. I first wrote A Gift from the Stars in 2020 that tells my abduction story and all the knowledge I've learned from the star people who rescued me. Then I wrote 2 other books, We Will Never Let You Down, My Encounters with Val Thor. The Cedars, it's my encounters with a different group of extraterrestrials who are more intergalactic culture. And I recently released Area 51, Conversations with Insider Stephen Chua. And that's for all those who are interested in this. So Amazon and on my website.
Okay, Elena, thank you very much for being on the Quantum Action podcast. We're here to take you to infinity and beyond, and I truly believe today we did have an infinity and beyond conversation. And so subscribe if you haven't done so already, and check out these other interviews that we've done here on Quantum Action, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.